world market is opening up, and hence the job opportunities are increasing day by day. But only for those who are skilled and efficient. With more and more new projects emerging, the demand for well-accomplished and certified project managers is constantly on the rise. With assistance from Phil C. Akinwale, aspiring candidates can expect one-of-a-kind attention and a results-oriented approach in providing distinguished project management training for various project management certifications, including both the PMP and CAPM exam. To enhance your credibility as a leader and as an entrepreneur, it is essential to be trained and coached in your areas of focus. Phil C. Akinwale conducts project management training workshops, leadership training seminars, and executive coaching programs to prepare candidates for the next big step in their careers and various professional exams. Phil is the author and producer of various books, audiobooks, and study guides, including the Project Management Audio Digest, which is a 12-CD audiobook with in-depth reviews of the PMBOK guide that have been key to many project managers being successful on the PMP exam.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with PMI and PMP and your philosophies and how that's going for you today?
Well, I'll give you the short of it. It's a really long story. It starts back in 2001, 2002 when I was working on my master's degree at the University of Greenwich. I had a professor who seemed to be very interested in me doing a project management dissertation. In fact, the dissertation was on the barriers to implementing project management systems. And Dr. Keith Jones, you know, is the professor I'm talking about, great guy, and he thought that this would be a great dissertation to work on. So I started working on the dissertation, had a lot of research, interviewing different project managers, engineers worldwide, trying to find the barriers to them implementing their project management systems. So that was fun, but the truth about it is I hadn't really understudied the PMI. I didn't even know much about the PMI, the Project Management Institute. So after writing that dissertation, shortly after, I had the pleasure of working on a project, an environmental engineering project, which had stakeholders such as the AZNG and the DoD. So I became increasingly interested in project management controls, not just managing projects, but the controls, the software, the aspects of managing cost, time, scope, and how all those integrated. And I had a very interesting stakeholder who wanted to know more about the project controls, where the project was. So it was very involving, you know, scheduling with MS Project and so on at this environmental engineering firm. So that got me deeper into project management. And along the way, I ended up meeting my mentor. Her name is Mary Hirschner, great project manager, program manager, project management visionary. And she saw me working on these projects and said, Phil, why don't you think about taking an exam called the PMP exam?
Phil is the president and co-founder of Praizion Media, an established academic institution that provides project management training and is a global registered education provider with Project Management Institute. As a pioneer in this field and as a registered education provider, REP, with the Project Management Institute, PMI, Praizion Media advocates good practices and the project management framework in the PMBOK guide. Praizion Media's international reach is worldwide. With the help of their learned and experienced faculty, candidates can surely count upon support for their success on PMI exams and in their project management and life goals. In Phil's approach to training project managers, first, the candidates are given detailed information regarding general project management in a project management basics or fundamentals class. This class is usually anywhere from 1 to 3 days long, depending on the knowledge and experience of those in attendance.
Hi, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
What do you hope to gain from today's session?
Well, I'm juggling a lot of projects, and I need a little more training for project management.
Oh, glad you're here. Come on
Thank
in.
you.
It was actually my day off, but boss called me in, so
welcome.
management it is.
Welcome. How are you? What do you hope to gain from today's session here at PMI?
Well, I'm interested in the project management, but I want to learn more about the leadership skills portion.
Oh, great. We came to the right place.
Thanks.
Let's join Phil in the classroom to learn the basics of project management.
Hello. Morning, everyone. How you doing? You ready for today's big event? We had our little webinar preamble, where we introduced ourselves, but there's nothing like meeting in person, is there? So some of you flew in, some of you drove in. Does everyone here know everyone here?
Not really.
Not really. So why don't we have our quick intros? You're going to be doing a lot of teamwork, so get to know each other, okay? So kind of mix and mingle and know each other's names. I'm going to give you a quick test on what everyone's name is, so you better you better get to it, okay? So let me set up and I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to do that. All right, we're all set up. Now, one of your senior management staff who put all this together, he's not here right now. What's his name?
Bill.
Bill, thank you. So Bill's going to be here eventually, and when he gets here, we're going to kick off our PMO discussions, because I know he's trying to put a PMO together. But how many of you have been for a project management training ever? Have you ever been? Now, just give me a quick yell, because I'm still trying to get everyone's names registered. So your name is?
Jim.
And which department do you work with?
IT professional.
IT, okay. And you?
Tony Hope.
Okay. And
Speaking coach.
okay, you're speaking coach. Nice. You've probably done some big events, right? From what I remember, huh? From our webinar.
Hi, I'm Henry Brown. I'm new here at the company.
Great. So this is your, how many weeks have you been here?
Just 2.
Great. Are they treating you nicely?
I'm just getting my feet wet.
Excellent. And your name?
I am Betty, and I am a training manager.
Great. Nice to have you, Betty. And
Trina Wales, I'm Director of Account Management.
oh, nice. Do you have a lot of those customers in account management? Because you manage customer accounts, so how's that going for you?
Well, not so good right now.
And your name?
Shelley Wright, and I have 12 projects going right now, and
Wow.
I have several project managers under me.
Interesting. You're a program manager. Sounds like you're
Yeah.
more of a program manager. I know we're still trying to define the roles
Okay.
in your organization, but you're really more like a program manager. Well,
That's
let's get it. Yeah, you really are. So let's get into it. So without looking at his name tag, what's his name, Betty?
Jim.
With his name covered, Shelley, what's his name?
Tony.
Okay. I've spilled all the beans and you've got great
Yeah,
name tags
yeah.
anyway. Okay, well that's good project management, and good project management is getting organized, knowing where you're going, having a game plan. But right now we're going to talk about project management, because you guys really manage projects. The only thing is, maybe you don't know what a project is. Now I know not everyone's Shelley, who's got 12 projects, and I know she knows. But IT teams, training teams, and so on, we really need to know what projects are. So I want you to take your Project Management Essentials book, take a look at page 11, and the last paragraph at the bottom, and that last paragraph says, why project management? Why project management? That last paragraph at the bottom, does everyone see it? Can someone read it for us?
Projects are authorized to fulfill a need for products or services. These projects are short-term endeavors which need to be managed to maximize time, money, and opportunities.
Great. So what are we trying to maximize? Time, money, and great. So that's the mindset I want you to go into in project management. Project management isn't all about managing the bad or the difficult or the unknown. It also has to do with searching for opportunities, even in the middle of your project management. But let's talk about what a project is, or what some of the characteristics of a project could be. Can anyone, maybe just from the top of your head, maybe from your gut instinct, tell me, what do you think a project is? Let's throw me out any suggestions. Anyone?
Someone's dream.
Okay. A dream? Who can tell me another word for dream?
Goal.
Thank you. Absolutely. Goal. That's very important. But how do we get to our goal? From zero of having nothing, nothing. We've only got a dream. How do we get to the end goal? How do we do that? Thank you. We need to plan. So when we're talking about project management, we need to plan. That's a big part of project management. What else do we need to do to get to our, all the way at the end, our final destination, our goal? What else do we need to do?
Define components.
Very good. So we need to identify, it's still part of your planning, identify some components, right? We need to, when you talk about components, can you break that down a little bit?
All the nuts and bolts of how that will work.
Okay, how it will work.
We need to acquire the resources.
Thank you. Absolutely. We're talking about resources. What else are we talking about?
People.
People. So when you talk about resources, you're talking about people. What else could you? Time. Okay. So we're talking about scheduling, which is still going to go back in here to our planning. But what other resources are we talking about? Money is another resource. So we're also talking about our budgeting, which is also a part of planning. What else?
An opportunity to move forward.
Okay, so we're talking about, that's really part of risk management, what you've mentioned right there. That's our risk management. Because risk management has to do with you've probably heard of Donald Rumsfeld, his little rant about known knowns and unknown unknowns, right? In risk management, we talk about unknown unknowns, but we also talk about known knowns. We talk about risks, we talk about opportunities. So not every risk is bad. And that's why risk management is another big part of planning. Now, I'm still looking for some resources. People, what else? Let's say we're tarring a road, or we're trying to build, we're trying to construct. What other resources would you think of?
Well, the capital items, the pieces that you need, the equipment.
Okay, there you go. That's what I'm looking for. People, equipment, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And what's the last one? I mean, you've got the equipment, you've got the people, but what's this? What is it? Materials. What's your name again, please?
I'm Tony.
Tony, very good. So we're talking about materials. That is a big part of project management. People, equipment, and materials. Resources. So how it will work, how do we get the resources, how do we manage them? So we're going to plan, but remember, we've got nothing. Now we've got all this great stuff, all this great information. How do we arrive at our goal? We've still got some parts that are missing, and I want you to brainstorm for them. Should I give you an inkling? Let's open up our Project Management Essentials book. Actually, where you're going to find this is more into, let me give you a little tip here. Let's take a look at page 46, 47, 48 especially. What else do we need to do? Take a look at page 48 and 49.
Timelines.
Any way you want to think of it. What do you think we need? What else do we need to do? What haven't we mentioned?
Human resource management.
That's another one. So when we talk about people, we're talking about human resource management. Very good. What else is missing?
Schedule.
Schedule, which is obviously this.
Okay.
That's there.
Plan for cost expense.
Thank you, cost. So we're talking about money, which is, the formal name is cost management, but you're right on. Absolutely. What else?
Communication.
That's the big one right there. So communication. Now let me ask you this while you're still brainstorming for what to do on a project. Actually, that goes into plan. What could possibly go wrong in communicating on a project? Ideas?
No communication at all.
No communication. Absolutely. No communication. That's true. That could be bad. So these are pitfalls. Okay, and part of this training is the Everyone Communicates Few Connect track. I'm sure you've hopefully got your workbooks. We're going to talk about that a lot more, so that's very good. Tony, for bringing that in. What else could be bad in communicating, or what other pitfall can you think of?
Not communicating clearly.
Thank you. Clearly. We need to communicate clearly. Very good. And all this stuff, the reason why it goes into planning is in project management, we need to plan what to communicate, why to communicate it, when to communicate, and to communicate clearly. You see, a few months ago, a student of mine at Chevron, when I was training them, he said, Phil, isn't this project management stuff just good common sense, documented? And I said, absolutely it is. But the truth about it is many people fail to plan, right? And as the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So when we talk about all these different components, these are all going to help us plan, right? So we're going to plan how we're going to communicate, but then we also need to actually communicate. So I think we've talked quite a bit about planning. What else is missing on page 48, 49, 50? What else is missing?
Well, one thing I thought of is the right hand needs to know what the left hand's doing.
Absolutely.
We're all on the same page.
That's true, and that all boils down to this big plan. In fact, we have a name for it. You might actually know this, Shelley. This is called a project management plan. So this is really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to cut all the crud because there's so much information in project management. But from what Bill told me, you need to hit the ground running tomorrow with tools. I've actually got some pretty good templates for you to use, which I'll be passing out to you later on. Right? These are tools and templates to help you hit the ground running, be more efficient. So going back to your question about the left hand and what the right hand is saying, we have what we call a project management plan that will integrate all of these different pieces, and it will let everyone on the project know what's going on. So there's a few things. Okay, we've got nothing, right? But we've got a dream, right? Our dream also needs to be documented. That dream is documented in something we call a project charter. So if there's someone who's got a dream and wants it to come to reality, it has to be authorized first in the company, because I know, like you're in IT, you probably have dreams of how to make your systems more efficient and so on. So if Jim has got an idea of how to better enhance the system, he's got a dream, but that dream also needs to go through management's approval and be authorized, because management actually wants to spend money on what they know is like worth spending money on. So they get his dream, they put it into a charter, they assign someone like Shelley, a project manager, who drives all of this stuff through. So the project manager is going to work with a team to come up with a project management plan. Now the next step, what do you think the next step is after coming out with a plan? What else do you think we need to do?
Once you plan it, don't you have to actually go do it?
Thank you. We need to go do it. Exactly. So let me show you where we are right now. We've kind of covered the beginning, which we call the initiating stage. And initiating is, in my world, I just call it, dreaming and getting your dream authorized. All right? So that we've talked about that. The next thing is planning, which we've talked about a lot, right? And planning is all about coming out with your final project management plan, right? And then what Trina said is we need to execute. Thank you. Execute. And we call that executing, right? So what do you think we need to do to execute all the great stuff we've planned? What do we need to do? Betty's been absolutely quiet today. What do you think we need to do to execute our plan?
Make sure you have everything you need.
Make sure you have everything you need, good. And then what do?
Do it.
Do it!
On it.
Just do it. So this is where we get it done. Get it done.
That's where you assign people too, isn't it?
Well, you actually assign people in your planning stage, right? Because we've got scheduling, so people's schedules need to be balanced. We've also got the resources aspect, so we need to find people that we need. Now, I know you guys have got a phenomenal company, there are lots of people working for you, but haven't you, I'll ask Shelley this, haven't you been through instances where the people you're working for, or the people who you want people from, I'm talking about the functional managers, they tell you, sorry, we don't have anyone to help you on your project. So what do you do in instances where you look around you and you don't find people you need in the organization? What do you do?
You go outside possibly, and actually that would come when you actually see how you've been monitoring the whole project and the items that identify the items that you don't have and then look for it outside.
Absolutely. Now this is a big one. I want you to take a look. I just want to cut to the chase here and just illustrate something she mentioned on page 50. It says the project team should, what, on page 50? The first thing you see up there? What did it say?
Plan procurement.
Exactly. Hi, you must be Bill.
Yes, I'm Bill.
Now we
Hi,
spoke on the phone,
Yes,
obviously.
glad to be here.
Thank you. So obviously these are your team members and people that you've worked with. We're just going over project management basics. I know you've already attended such classes, but this is new obviously to them, and we're trying to get into the meat of what project management is. So if you want to throw in anything, just feel free to do so.
Will do. Thank you.
But great to have you. So we're on page 50, and it says the project team should what? Plan. What's that word?
Procurement.
Say it loud.
Procurement.
Procurement. So when we talk about procurement, we're talking really about contracts. So what she's alluding to, what Shelley's alluding to is, if you need to get something from outside the organization, it could be any of these resources. Maybe you don't have people you need because functional managers say, I'm not going to release those resources to you. What are you going to do? You have to look out. It's either you're going to wrestle with those functional managers or you're going to look out. How about equipment? If you don't have the equipment you need, you've got to rent it or you've got to buy it. That's another area. And of course, materials. So it says on page 50, the project team should plan procurements, identifying anything that needs to be purchased outside the organization to perform work on the project. This might have been done previously at a high level, but at some point on the project, the team must go deeper into make or buy analysis to ensure that everything that needs to be procured, be it resources, services, or equipment, is identified and accounted for in the procurement management plan. So when you think about this plan right here, the project management plan, it contains so many other little plans. You know, it contains a plan for time, for money, for procurement. All that stuff is what we are going to now execute. We're going to get it done. Now, who can tell me, what do you think could happen? So let's put our execute in here. So we've talked about, we're initiating the project, we've planned it, now we're executing it. Okay, let me get rid of this other part so you focus on what we're doing right now, which is executing. Get rid of this as well. So right now we're executing, right? We're getting stuff done. Get stuff done. What do you think could happen from the time we are executing and getting stuff done to, what did we say in the beginning, our final goal? What could happen between here and here?
Budget constraints.
Budget constraints, thank you. So I'm going to put these right here.
Equipment problems.
Good. Budget constraints, equipment. What are equipment problems likely to do to your cost baseline or your schedule? What do you think?
They slow the schedule down.
Slow the schedule down, exactly. So we're going to also run into scheduling issues. Now, how do you guys schedule today? Do you use like more of a fancy software application like MS Project or Primavera, or do you use? So you use Primavera from what I'm aware of. Very good. Bill, now in the lower level of the company where people aren't exposed to all that fancy stuff of Primavera and the junior project managers, how do they go about building schedules?
Microsoft primarily there.
Okay, Microsoft Project.
Microsoft and us, we're actually using the Google
Oh, really?
As well.
Oh, nice. One of those open
Yes,
source.
yeah, we set up just for internal uses.
Great, excellent. So the key thing is when you are in this next stage, and I'm going to give this next stage a term, it's called monitoring and controlling, right? And in monitoring and controlling, this is where we monitor, as we're getting stuff done, we are monitoring what we're getting done. So if we find equipment problems or budget constraints or schedule issues, the project manager needs to do something. What does the project manager need to do?
Determine the budget.
Determine the budget again. If things have gone wrong, then find out where there's some budget variances. So really, we call this control costs, right? So I think what Jim is alluding to is finding out the budget implications on things going wrong. What does the project manager need to do if the project manager finds everything going wrong?
Communications.
Say that again?
Plan for communications.
Use your communications management plan and communicate to who needs that communication. Very good. Now you guys in IT, do you really, what kind of project management approaches do you use? Because I've heard that you don't use the waterfall approach. Have you guys been very recently for any training on Agile or Scrum yet? Have you been for those trainings yet?
No.
Bill, your team probably wants to look into, there's a new certification we've got out in the PMI. It's called PMI-ACP, and it stands for Agile Certified Practitioner. This might help your IT guys because I know we're talking about the monitoring and controlling and stuff, but
For tracking costs and expenses.
yeah, but they do it in a more, how should I put it, a more agile way. It's not, we don't go through every single bit here. They kind of go through a quicker way of doing things. So just something to put in your notes. We could talk about that offline.
Thank you.
Because I know you guys have quite a few IT staff that could, I've worked in IT. I've worked with IT effectiveness. You know the thing about us? We love getting stuff done quick. And we hate having to schedule, plan, replan. They just like moving really, really quick. So just something to take note of. Okay?
Would that entail project or strategic planning, like a 5-year plan out?
Oh, I
you
see.
better strategically monitor what you're doing.
Good question. Well, for the most part, I know that's what you do in the company today. You do a lot of the projects you work on are strategically planned. I know you've got a project selection committee, which Bill is on.
Right.
But talking about other companies, IT companies, strictly IT companies and startups, a lot of them end up gravitating more towards an agile style. So it doesn't have to do with years of strategic planning up front. It's just what is relevant for the market.
Okay.
Let's authorize a project to do that. So it's kind of different.
Yeah.
They're more like thinking on their toes. Okay?
Okay.
So some companies, they love that. Other companies, because they need to apportion budget, they've got stakeholder reviews and all sorts of things. It's less of a innovative initiative in those type of projects. They plan every single thing up front for many years coming, but a lot of IT companies, they do things on the fly.
Okay.
I think what pertaining to the ACP, a lot of times we're looking for real-time solutions.
There you
The answers
go.
right now, it's not really necessarily projections. But right now, I've got a client in London and I've got one over in Cairo, and I need answers now, especially if there's an IT issue, we're transferring information.
Absolutely, and that's why the PMI ACP, it fits the IT solutions very well. There's also another one, and I am also a certified Scrum Master. It's called a CSM. You might want to check into the Scrum Alliance and see what options your team has to become Scrum Masters. You might want to look.
Scrum Alliance?
Yeah,
Okay.
Scrum Alliance. And yeah, we'll take those offline and talk about those a little bit more. So we're talking about monitoring and controlling, and I just found it very interesting that Jim, the IT guy, was saying plan, and that's why I went into that ACP thing. But the key thing at the end of the monitoring and controlling, or when you've really monitored and controlled everything that needs to be monitored and controlled, two things need to happen. You know their problems, you know their issues, but what do you need to do? You need to take action. So it's kind of like a do loop. You execute, you get stuff done, you monitor and control. Oh, I need to do something else. And sometimes as you're moving through a project, there are 3 things to be aware of. And I'll just mention them very quickly. I know I'm putting you in fire hose mode. I do apologize. But we have what we call preventive action. Preventive action. And this is all about preventing things from going wrong. So you're seeing it coming and you're like, oh, we need to prevent this, right? We also have what we call corrective action. Who can tell me what they think that is? What do you think corrective action is?
Correcting a problem.
Correcting a problem, but you're really correcting it before the problem materializes in a deliverable. So let's say we're putting this book together and we're kind of working on sheets of paper and we see, oh, there's a potential that something could happen. We're going in the wrong direction. Where, you know, the process is a little bit wrong. We could correct it before we actually come out with the thing and it's wrong. So that's corrective action. And then that's different from what we call defect repair. In defect repair, you are done with the deliverable. You're finished. And if you come out with the wrong defect or, you know, the wrong deliverable or defective deliverable, you're going to have to repair the deliverable. Now, what does that imply if you have a defective deliverable and you need to repair it?
Additional costs.
Thank you. Additional costs.
And we don't like that word.
Additional costs. So you need to be aware of that. So this area right here, it revolves around quality control. I know we didn't talk about quality planning, but quality needs to be planned in to your project. Okay? So quality planning right in there. Okay? So we've got our initiating the project, which is our dream, and our project charter. I'll just say initiating up here so we're not lost. This is our planning. So this is our planning stage. And of course, you can see planning has more information than anything else because this really takes a lot of time and effort. But, you know, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we don't want to fail, we plan. Then we execute, we get stuff done. There's lots of things we do here. One of the big things, though, is similar to why we're here. We're here to learn. But, of course, you guys didn't know, this is a big team building initiative. So what are we going to do? We're actually going to play some games before we get out of here. I know it might shock you, but we're going to play some games, right? Some board games that we've got. And in executing, this is where you build the team, right? We call it develop project team. So we're going to develop our project team, right? Also important, we begin to acquire our team. And we manage our project team. Now, the difficult thing in the nature of work people like Shelley do who are just strictly project managers, the difficulty there is the people working for Shelley don't all report directly to her. It would be more like this is Shelley and this is a functional manager. And this is the resource working with Shelley here. This is our resource, right? There is a dotted line relationship, but a straight line direct relationship to the functional manager. So this resource reports directly to this person. What do you think, what kind of challenges do you think Shelley is likely to face with such a resource that reports dotted line to her and straight line to this functional manager? What kind of challenges do you perceive?
Possibly not the latest information.
Not the latest information, true. Now, let's say this guy or this lady has got a high priority thing to work on, and we've got Shelley's thing to work on. Where do you think this person's priority will likely lie?
With their manager.
The functional manager. So for project managers working on projects, they need to build their team, they need to get confidence from the people that they really know what they're doing, and they need to get buy-in and support. And that can be a very tough one to do in executing. So this area here and this area here, once your project has started, there's a lot of juggling and balancing. Now what happens if this resource is taken away altogether and leaves the company, so she doesn't have anyone fulfilling that need? What does she need to do? Replace it. It's not as easy for people who have lots of experience like this resource. So what I'm trying to get you to think about is some of the bad things or unfortunate things that could happen through the project. They need to be monitored and controlled. In executing, you need to get buy-in from the team. You need to acquire the team, develop them, send them for training, which is part of development. How many of you have ever been on a project where you never even had the training to work on the project and they just throw you on a project? I've been on a few of those. So that's monitoring and controlling for you. And then finally, you arrive at your goal. If everything goes well, you're able to avoid all those hurdles and pitfalls. You are ultimately going to get to what we call the closing stage. And you're going to achieve your goal. But there's also something important in achieving your goal. Let me ask you this. What would you do if you worked on this project, found lots of things that you had no idea about before? It was a learning journey for you. You've gone through the learning journey. And then you have colleagues somewhere else who are about to go through a similar journey. What should you do as a good resource or a good project manager? What do you think?
Share your experience.
Share your experience, very good. We call that lessons learned. This is big because right here, this is your real estate for your company. Why let this team go through exactly the same hurdle you went through when you could tell them, hey, this is what you need to look out for. Make sure that you don't go through the journey I did. It's not worth it. Besides, I've already been through it.
Another term I've heard is best practices.
Thank you. Well, your best practices you're going to get your best practices from your lessons learned. There's also another term that you might have heard. It's called a post-mortem analysis. And all these things, they all tie in together. Your post-mortem and lessons learned pretty much the same thing, but your best practices, you derive your best practices from going through these experiences and knowing what works and what doesn't. And guess what? These best practices, they're going to now be sent back to your planning. Or even when someone tells you, oh, I have a dream to do this, from best practices, you might say, hold on. Now it's not a good time to do this because of your lessons learned and your best practices and your information. I mean, for some leaders, this stuff is just purely instinctive. They know that's not going to work this time around. That's not going to work at this time of the year. You know, that's not going to work right now because technology has evolved, or this could work down the road. There are lots of examples I could give on that. But that is pretty much what your project management is.
Right.
Isn't that a pretty picture? Anyone coming into the room would wonder, what on earth is this? But you understand, right? So let's get this straight. We have 5 stages in project management. 5. You might want to write this down. The first one is initiating. Initiating the project. So we talked about your dream idea, your dream goal. So it's one thing to have a dream. It's another thing to know how to get to your dream. So let me help you a little bit with these notes. If you go to page 40 in your book, it's number 1. And what does that say?
Initiating the project.
Initiating the project, very good. And it says initiating the project involves identifying a need, understanding the business case and the high-level requirements, and then transforming all that information into a succinct, precise project charter, which authorizes the project. All right? So that's the first thing you're going to do, initiating the project. The second thing is on page 46, and that says planning the project. Right?
Yes.
And it says, planning the project in plain terms. Project should be thoroughly planned to ensure that what?
When the project execution begins, there will be a plan and a set of guidelines to follow. This ensures that the project stays on track.
Thank you very much.
Very important to us.
Very important, absolutely. So you want a plan and a set of guidelines to follow. So that's step 2. You want to plan that great goal. You know, a great goal or a great dream or a great vision that's not planned, it's just going to be derailed ultimately. Page 51, executing the project. Okay, it says, that's step 3. In order to execute the project work, the team needs the project management what? Plan, thank you. It is the role of the project manager to ensure that the work is what? Executed according to the plan. The project manager may work with the functional managers on the project team to ensure that work being carried out is performed according to the plan and the right what? Quality standards. Very good. So which 3 steps have you got written down? The first is initiating, the second is
Planning.
and the third is
Executing.
very good. And then we move on to page 52, step 4. And this is monitoring and controlling the project. While the work is being executed according to the plan, the project manager and the team should, I can't hear you,
Monitor.
monitor and control the work. Very good, being accomplished. This could include the project team members checking work results to ensure accuracy. So all this stuff we talked about here, the budgets, the costs, that's all it, okay? The project manager and the team should also review work results of other individuals such as vendors, contractors, or other resources external to the project, okay? And then finally, closing the project. This is on page 54. And it says, the final stage in project management is the closing stage. In closing out a project, the project team has several tasks to carry out. The most important tasks are to verify that all the work has been captured in the deliverable or the requirements are inherent in the what?
Deliverable.
So what is that saying? That's really exposing you to the fact that you could have gotten done with your project, come out with a deliverable, but guess what? Maybe all the requirements aren't inherent in the deliverable. That means you've just wasted all your time. You finally come out with a deliverable, but the customer says, that's not what I asked for. So it's very important throughout your project that you manage your stakeholder expectations, you keep them updated, right? You make them aware of what's going on and you make them happy. All right, so that pretty much wraps up. We've actually covered chapter 3 pretty much in detail. But we also have another chapter which we probably need to flesh out a little bit more. So this was chapter 3 on the 5 process groups and what project management is. But I'm curious to know, do you really understand the details in what a project is? I know you know how to get it done, but let's talk about the definition. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the nitty-gritty. But do you have any questions before?
This is all tangible stuff, but I think a big part of the whole thing getting it done is just the people involved.
Very
Because you've
good.
got attitudes and you've got people that are just not part of the game, and so just working with them, and your example over here with the resource thing, it's the people, I think, that make the problem.
Right. Absolutely
So is that
right.
the communication piece? Or?
That's a good question. So did you heard a question?
I heard part of it. Could you say that?
It's about the people involved. I think the hardest part from getting to initiating to closing
Mhm.
is just the people that you're involved with, people with attitudes, people that get sick, whatever. It's just dealing with the people is the most difficult part, because if you have a machine
Welcome
that
to
breaks,
my world.
if you have a machine that breaks down, you go buy a new one or whatever. But the people, I think that's the most difficult piece.
That's a great question.
I was going to say, people can be very talented and skilled, but it's their character and how they live life that's going to make the project move forward.
Absolutely, that's true. And I'm sure everyone has got their lovely little book here. So Trina brings up a valid point, because it's all about attitudes, isn't it? So what do we see on the left-hand side? It says the 21 irrefutable laws of what? Leadership. And this is a great book. Being a member of the John Maxwell team, I train John's content. So the question you're asking, this is really going to be answered in our 3rd session for today, which is on the 21 laws of leadership, because it's true. You could have a team that knows all the techniques and all the tools, but if the attitudes are warped, there's no way you're going to get to your end goal in a successful manner. So, very good question. Just remind me, when we get into the 21 laws, we're going to dig deeper into it, okay? So, great point, Trina. We're going to take our quick 5-minute break. I just don't want to jump the gun, but we'll talk about the 21 laws in our 3rd session, but our 2nd session is going to dig more into the nitty-gritty and definitions, all right? Any other questions before we round up? Good? All right, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we will be back. Why do we need project management? Can anyone think of an idea of why we need project management? You probably identify that we need project management to put order into what we do in the organization. You know, different endeavors going on, we need to put project management around it to manage tasks to a baseline, to instill law and order, and to adopt beneficial methodologies. Now, in your own words, let me ask you, what is a project? What do you think a project is? Let's talk about a project for a second. Let's go to the whiteboard now and let's identify what a project is. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to produce a unique product, service, or result. In other words, we can define all of these components under one term called deliverable. So really what you're trying to do in project management is to ensure that you come out with a deliverable that's unique, that meets the customer's requirements. That's really what your project is. It's temporary, it's unique, and there's another term which we call progressively elaborated. We're going to talk about that as we progress further in this study. So, as you can see on the slide here, a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project may produce a product, a deliverable used as a component to produce another endeavor, or a capability to perform a service. So what that means is, if you have 5 different widgets here, 5 different widgets, A, B, C, D, and E, at the end of the day, project management will manage all of these widgets as individual projects, and at the end of the day, you can have that all adding up to give you some macro deliverable over here. So that's really what your project management is. If you've worked on projects with multiple vendors, you could manage those multiple vendors in different projects, and they could all add up to a macro project. So that's project management for you. Project management is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. The temporary nature of these projects indicates a definite beginning and end. So again, to the whiteboard, let's look at what project management is, because this definition will really help you in understanding the PMBOK Guide 4th edition. So when we say project management, we're talking about the application of certain things to an endeavor. So let's put our endeavor here in the middle. Remember, it's a temporary and unique endeavor. It's progressively elaborated. We're going to talk about that too. So there's your endeavor. Project management is the application of knowledge about project management, skills in project management. I often say to my students, the project manager should have skills. If he doesn't have skills that can cover him in the project, he probably wants to get people that have those skills. The project manager doesn't need to have all the skills, but he does need to have the skill of management. He does need to have the skill of human resource management, being able to get a team together. So knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques. So from this little doodle here, you can see knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques are applied to your temporary endeavor, right, to come out with a final product, service, or result. That's really what your project management definition should be. Final product, service, or result. So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to a temporary endeavor to come out with a final product, service, or result. And for that reason, in the PMBOK Guide 4th edition, we've got knowledge being discussed in the knowledge areas, skills as being the skills of the project manager, tools and techniques as being what the project manager needs to do to get stuff done. So high-level project characteristics here. Projects are temporary, which means they have a start date and an end date. They're unique. No 2 projects are the same. They're either for a different client. If they're not for a different client and they're for similar implementations, then it means that there are some differences on the project. Non-repetitive, progressively elaborated, and done for a purpose. Now, progressive elaboration is one I want to talk about. Progressive elaboration refers to the incremental clarity or incremental clarifying of what happens on the project. Let me show you an example on the whiteboard here. I'd also like you to go and look up the word scope creep while you do that. Scope creep is another word that is closely associated with the term progressive elaboration, but one is good and one is not. So, progressive elaboration refers to the process in which the project is clarified, it becomes clearer, requirements are more defined. But on the other hand, we have a term we definitely don't want on our projects, which is scope creep. Scope creep is not good. We don't want scope creep. Scope creep refers to unauthorized random additions on our projects. We definitely do not want scope creep. We want progressive elaboration, because progressive elaboration deals with passing changes through a term that we call, and I'll write it here, we call this integrated change control. Integrated change control is the process of managing changes on our project. So if we're talking about progressive elaboration, say today we're starting with project X and we have 5 requirements defined, right? Say a stakeholder comes along and asks for an additional 2 requirements. Progressive elaboration will not just take those 2 requirements and put them into the project. Progressive elaboration will look at the impact on the project. That's what the project manager should do. Look at the project, look at the impact that those additional 2 requirements are going to have on the project, and the project manager could field these requirements from getting added to the project or not. The project manager could say, well, that's going to have an impact on scope, and that's going to cost an additional, say, $4 million. So that's going to be added scope. If you want that to happen on the project, we're going to have to put that through integrated change control. We're going to have to go to a change control board, CCB, and get that additional scope approved for that cost. So progressive elaboration will make sure that changes are managed in an orderly fashion. Scope creep, on the other hand, is kind of linked to the hero syndrome, in which people want to be heroes. The customer asks you, can you do that today? You say, oh, we could do it in 2 minutes. We don't even need a whole day. But that's scope creep and unauthorized random additions. You don't just approve a change as a project manager. It has to go through a formal process, and that is linked to progressive elaboration. Very important term. And then lastly, a project is done for a purpose. It's done to fulfill a need. A project is temporary. As you can see in the slide, it has a start date and an end date. Temporary is not referring to the end deliverable, but it's really referring to the time frame of the project. Unique, as I said earlier, a project may be similar to other projects, but the whole thing revolving around the project management of that project is unique. Non-repetitive refers to project elements which may be repetitive, but project deliverables in themselves are non-repetitive. For example, on this slide you can see you've got different cars. You've got a green one, you've got a blue one, you've got a pink one. Well, these cars are all pretty much developed the same way. You've got the wheels, you've got the body, you've got the lights and so on, the upholstery inside. They're all developed pretty much the same way, but you can see they look different. Even if they were the same model, they've got different owners. So project management is looked at as creating project deliverables that are non-repetitive. And we've talked about progressive elaboration. As you can see, progressive elaboration is the process of clarifying and identifying the characteristics of the project and product as time progresses. The very important one to take note of. Initially, the project is loosely defined because we don't know that much. But as we begin to find out more, we definitely need to add it in a very methodical manner. Done for a purpose. Why do we carry out projects? Well, we're trying to fulfill a need, right? We're trying to make sure that the organization that is embarking on the project gets to the end deliverable that they want. It might be due to an organizational need, or it could be due to some contractual requirement. So a project ends when the project objectives are met. Project objectives cannot be met and the project is closed, or when the project is no longer needed.